Ambassador Chen Wei stood before the Convergence Assembly and understood, finally, why Earth sinologists had gotten everything wrong. The chamber was beautiful. Crystalline walls, refracted light from a dozen suns, casting the 200 assembled species in shifting rainbows. The air hummed with translation matrices, turning a cacophony of clicks, songs, and electromagnetic pulses into seamless conversation. Everything about the space whispered ancient, powerful, eternal. Everything about it was a lie. We are pleased. High Coordinator Veshtarn said, their mantis, like form clicking, with what the translator rendered as benevolence, to extend full protectorate status to humanity. You will have representation in the lower assembly, access to established trade routes, and the protection of the convergence, fleet against all external threats. Chen kept her expression neutral. 3 months of negotiations had led to this moment. Earth's governments had sent her with clear instructions. Secure membership. Ensure humanity's survival in a galaxy that had been civilized for 50,000 years. She'd spent those 3 months learning to read what the translators didn't say. The terms, she said carefully, include technology, sharing provisions, standard practice. Veshtarn's voice carried warmth that didn't reach their compound eyes. Advanced civilizations share their knowledge with developing species. It accelerates integration. 1. Way sharing. Chen pulled up the holographic contract with a gesture. We provide full access to our databases, research, and industrial processes. In return, we receive appropriate technology, as deemed suitable for our development level, by the Convergence Council. For your protection, interjected Ambassador Krell of the Thoraxian hegemony, his translator rendering his subsonic rumble as fatherly concern. Premature access to weapons of mass destruction, faster than light drives beyond your current capacity, or quantum level computation could destabilize your civilization. We've seen it happen. Species that grow too quickly. Fracture. Chen had heard this argument 17 times. She'd also read the classified reports from the Magellan's first contact team. The ones that never made it into official channels. The reports that described the Rishik Confederacy, a species that had refused convergence membership 2 centuries ago. Their worlds were now autonomous trade partners that coincidentally required convergence military bases for protection, and happened to export raw materials at prices that barely covered extraction costs. And the population limits? Chen asked. A ripple moved through the assembly. Several species shifted in their seating. The luminary delegate actually brightened, a sign of discomfort, according to the cultural briefings. Not limits, Veshtarn said smoothly. Guidelines. The convergence maintains ecological balance across all member territories. Humanity currently occupies 1 world and has established colonies on 3 others. The recommended population ceiling of 50 billion across all holdings ensures sustainable. We're at 12 billion, Chen interrupted. Concentrated on Earth, with small research outposts elsewhere. The ceiling isn't for sustainability. It's to ensure we never have enough people to matter. The silence that followed felt like pressure against her skin. Ambassador Chen. Veshtarn leaned forward, and for the first time, she heard something genuine in the translator's output irritation. You are new to galactic civilization. These protocols have maintained peace for millennia. Every species makes sacrifices for the greater good. Show me the weapons. Excuse me? Chen stood, her movement drawing every eye in the chamber. You offer protection. Protection implies threat. Show me what you're protecting us from. Let me see the military capabilities of the Convergence fleet. Let me understand what dangers justify these sacrifices. Veshtarn's mandibles clicked in a pattern the translator didn't bother to interpret. That information is restricted to senior council, members and military command. So we're expected to accept permanent subordinate status, surrender our technological autonomy, and cap our population growth, all to protect us from threats you won't even describe. Chen let her voice carry across the chamber. That's not protection. That's control. You speak of things you don't understand. Krell's subsonic voice dropped lower, and Chen felt it in her bones. Not fatherly anymore. The galaxy is dangerous, human. There are forces that would devour your species before you even understood you were prey. We offer you survival. At what cost? The same cost every civilization pays. Veshtarn said. The same cost 200 species have gladly accepted. Pride is expensive. Ambassador Chen. Usually fatal. Chen looked across the assembled species. 200 civilizations, all protected, all safe. All bound by the same restrictions. And suddenly, she understood what her xenologists had missed. They weren't looking at a galactic community. They were looking at a very successful empire that had learned to make subjugation feel like generosity. We need time, Chen said. This decision will shape humanity's future. I need to consult with my government. Of course. Veshtarn settled back, and the warmth returned to the translator's output, like someone had flipped a switch. Take one standard cycle. Consider carefully. The galaxy can be unforgiving to those without friends. The threat wasn't even veiled anymore. Chen returned to the human delegation's quarters and immediately activated the quantum encrypted channel to Earth. The signal would take 8 hours to reach Sol system, 8 hours back. 16 hours to learn whether humanity would kneel. She spent those hours reviewing every piece of intelligence they'd gathered. The patterns were clear once you looked for them. The Convergence didn't conquer, they domesticated. They offered protection, established dependence, and slowly tightened restrictions, until member species couldn't imagine survival outside the system. And they were very, very good at it. When the response finally came, it was from Secretary General Morrison himself. His face on the screen looked older than when she'd left Earth 3 months ago. The Security Council has voted, he said. We're aware it won't be popular with everyone. There are riots in Beijing and Mumbai already. But the decision is unanimous among the leadership. Chen waited. Tell them no. For a moment, Chen couldn't breathe. Sir, they've made it clear. I know what they've made clear. Morrison's voice was steady. We're not naive, Ambassador. We understand the risk. But our xenology teams have reached the same conclusion you have. This isn't an alliance. It's a cage. They'll isolate us. Possibly attack. Possibly. Morrison looked directly at the camera. But definitely they'll control us if we accept. We're choosing the possible threat over the certain prison. Come home, Ambassador Chen. Humanity has work to do. The next morning, Chen stood before the Convergence Assembly again. The chamber felt different now. Or perhaps she just saw it more clearly. The beauty was still there. But underneath it she could sense the weight of 50,000 years of control. Humanity respectfully declines. Convergence membership, she said. The chamber erupted. Not with anger, with confusion. Several species attempted to speak at once, creating a discordant wail that the translators struggled to parse. Veshtarn raised a crystalline appendage, and silence fell like a hammer. You. Decline. We appreciate the offer. Chen continued, her voice level. We hope to maintain friendly relations and pursue trade agreements. But we will not accept the terms as presented. You'll have no protection. Krell rumbled. No access to convergent space lanes. No trade with member species. We understand. You'll be alone. Chen met his eyes. Or the closest approximation his species had. We've been alone before. She turned to leave, and Veshtarn's voice stopped her. Ambassador Chen. You're making a mistake that will end your species. Chen looked back at the High Coordinator. Maybe. But it will be our mistake. Our ending. Our choice. Choice is a luxury you cannot afford. Then we'll die free, Chen said. Better that than live as pets. She walked out of the chamber, leaving 200 species in stunned silence behind her. Earth had just declared independence from a galactic order that had stood for 50 millennia. Now they had to survive it. They're waiting for us to panic. Admiral James Okonkwo stood before the holographic display of Sol System, watching the updated sensor data flow in from the outer monitoring stations. The display was disappointingly empty of threats, but also empty of friends. Secretary General Morrison nodded from his seat at the conference table. Around him sat the hastily assembled Crisis Council military commanders, scientists, intelligence directors, and the few diplomats who'd managed to establish any contact with non-convergent species. The convergence has made it clear, Morrison said. No member species may trade with us. No access to their space lanes. No communication through their relay networks. Isolation, said Director Sarah Kojima of the Strategic Intelligence Division. Classic siege tactics. They expect our economy to collapse, our colonies to fail without their technology, and humanity to come crawling back. Within a year. Will we? Asked General Zhang. The room fell silent. Not if we're smart about it. Okonkwo said finally. He gestured, and the hologram shifted to show humanity's current holdings. Earth, gleaming in blue. Mars with its growing dome colonies. Europa Station, drilling through ice to the ocean below. Titan, where atmospheric processors were slowly converting methane into breathable air. A handful of research outposts scattered across the outer system. Our fastest ships can barely reach zero. One key, Okonkwo continued. Our weapons are primitive chemical rockets and early directed energy systems. Our population is concentrated on one planet, making us vulnerable to any serious attack. By galactic standards, we're children playing with sticks. Encouraging, muttered Zhang. But we have something they don't expect. Okonkwo zoomed the display out, showing the vast empty space between stars. Time. They think we'll break in months. We have years to prepare. Morrison leaned forward. Explain. The convergence won't attack immediately. It would undermine their entire system. They're the benevolent protectors, remember. If they openly destroy a species for refusing membership, every other subject species starts wondering if the protection is really voluntary. They need us to fail on our own, or appear to threaten them first. So we have a grace period, Kojima said. How long? Best estimate. 3 to 5 years before they manufacture an incident, or decide our continued independence is too dangerous to tolerate. Okonkwo pulled up a separate document, which gives us time to execute Operation Seedfall. The name hung in the air. You want to scatter humanity, Morrison said slowly. Break apart everything we've built on Earth to hide in the dark. Not break, apart, diversify. Okonkwo's expression was grim. Right now, one attack on Earth ends us. We need redundancy. Hidden colonies. Deep space habitats. Ships that can run dark for years. We need to become impossible to kill in one strike. That's asking people to leave everything, said Representative Patel, one of the civilian oversight members. Their homes, their families. We're asking for volunteers. Okonkwo interrupted. But yes, we're asking people to become refugees in their own star system. To live in cramped habitats with recycled air and rationed food. To raise children who might never see Earth. Because if we don't, there won't be any children at all. Mars Colony. Valles Marineris Settlement. 14 months after rejection, Dr. Amara Okafor watched the construction drones work in the canyon depths below, their welding torches creating brief stars in the thin Martian atmosphere. The new facility was taking shape faster than projected. Desperation made excellent motivation. How's the shielding? Asked her assistant, Marcus Chen. No relation to Ambassador Chen, though he claimed distant cousin status when it suited him. Triple, layered thermal baffling, electromagnetic signature dampeners, and the whole thing buried under 30 meters of regolith. Amara pulled up the specifications on her tablet. Once complete, this facility could run at full capacity and be invisible to anything short of a deep penetration scan from orbit. And if they do a deep penetration scan, then we're fucked, Amara said cheerfully. But we're building 12 of these facilities across Mars, 17 on Titan, and God knows how many in the asteroid belt. They can't scan everything. Marcus looked out at the construction site. What are we building, exactly? The requisitions are compartmentalized. I only see my section. Amara hesitated, then decided he'd earned it. Shipyard. Capital class. Once we're operational, we can construct vessels too large to build on Earth and launch into orbit. We're building warships. We're building everything. Cargo haulers, colony ships, deep space explorers, and yes, warships. Because Okonkwo is right about one thing. We can't win a conventional fight against the convergence. But we don't need to win. We just need to make conquering us too expensive to be worth it. Asymmetric warfare. Survival warfare. Amara corrected. We're not trying to beat them. We're trying to make them decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Deep space. Kuiper Belt. 2 months after rejection. The Prometheus drifted in silence, among the ice and rock of the outer system, its reactor running at minimum capacity. Every non-essential system powered down. To any scanner, it would look like just another chunk of ancient debris. Inside, Captain Maria Santos watched her crew work with quiet efficiency. 48 men and women, living in cramped quarters for 6 months at a time, testing humanity's new doctrine. The Long Watch. Contact, whispered Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. Unknown vessel. Approximately 2 light minutes out. Bearing 037 by -15. Santos felt her pulse quicken but kept her voice steady. Classification. Analyzing. Ma'am, it's not broadcasting any recognition codes. Hull composition doesn't match Convergence standard alloys. Park looked up, eyes wide. I think it's independent. For the first time in nearly 2 years, humanity had found someone else who wasn't part of the Convergence. Santos made the decision instantly. Bring reactor to 20%. Charge the main transmitter. Narrow, beam only. I don't want this broadcast to half the galaxy. And get me Admiral Okonkwo on Quantum Link. Minutes ticked by in tense silence as the ship came to life around them. Finally, the communication system chirped. This is Captain Maria Santos of the Terran vessel Prometheus. She broadcast on multiple frequencies. We mean no harm. We seek trade and information. Please respond. Silence stretched. Santos was about to repeat the message when her console lit up with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared on screen was vaguely reptilian. Scaled skin and mottled gray, green, vertical pupils, a mouth that seemed to have too many teeth. But the eyes held something familiar. Wariness, hope, desperation, Terran. The translator rendered after a moment of processing. We do not know this word. You are not Convergence. We are not, Santos confirmed. We are human. We refuse their membership. The alien's expression changed in ways Santos couldn't interpret. But the translator caught the emotion in the next words. Then you are either very brave or very foolish. I am Captain Vexure of the Outer Reaches, Trade Collective. We are survivors of what the Convergence calls protection. Tell me, humans, do you seek allies, or simply those who will mourn you when you fall? Santos smiled grimly. Allies, if you'll have us. Then we should speak carefully, and away from listening sensors. Vexure said. There are more like us than the Convergence admits. Species who remember what freedom costs. Follow these coordinates. Tell no one you do not trust completely. And Captain Santos, welcome to the real galaxy. Earth, UN Complex. 36 months after rejection, Morrison stood in the observation gallery, looking down at the assembly floor, where representatives from 60 nations were engaged in heated debate. 3 years since rejection. 3 years of sacrifice, preparation, and growing fear. But also 3 years without the Convergence attack everyone had expected. Kojima appeared beside him, tablet in hand. Latest intelligence summary. Morrison scanned the document. Convergence diplomatic efforts had intensified. Pressure on border species to maintain the blockade. Increased surveillance of human colonies. Occasional navigational errors that brought Convergence ships uncomfortably close to Sol system. But no overt action. They're waiting, Morrison said. They're evaluating, Kojima corrected. Our intelligence suggests internal debate. Some factions want to crush us immediately as an example. Others see us as a long-term test case. If we fail on our own, it validates their system. If we succeed, then they have a problem. A philosophical problem that undermines their entire authority structure. Kojima agreed. Which means they'll have to act eventually. Question is when and how. Morrison turned from the gallery. What's our status? Better than projected. Operation Seedfall has 47 hidden facilities operational across the system. Population distribution is shifting. We've moved 8 million people off Earth to various colonies and habitats, with another 12 million in transit or training. 20 million refugees, Morrison said quietly. 20 million people who gave up homes, careers, families, to ensure humanity survives. Kojima interrupted gently. They know what they're doing, sir. The volunteer rates are actually higher than we need. People understand what's at stake. And our military capability. Growing. We've made contact with 7 non-convergent species through back channels. Most are too frightened to help openly, but they're sharing information, technology, and strategic intelligence. The Outer Reaches Collective has been particularly helpful. Turns out they've been preparing for convergence, expansion for decades. We're not alone, Morrison said, almost surprised. We were never alone, Kojima said. The convergence just made everyone too afraid to admit they hated the cage. We broke the silence. Now others are starting to whisper. Morrison looked back at the assembly, where representatives were still arguing about resource allocation, colony rights, and military spending. Messy, inefficient, gloriously human. How much longer do we have? He asked. Okongwa estimates 18 to 20. 4 months before the convergence decides we're too dangerous to ignore. They'll need a pretext. Some incident they can spin as human aggression. Then we use that time well. Morrison straightened. Accelerate Seedfall. Increase diplomatic outreach to potential allies. And get our shipyards running at maximum capacity. The new designs? All of them. When the convergence finally comes for us, I want them to find that the helpless children they dismissed have grown teeth. Convergence Intelligence Analysis Division. Station Zenith. Prime Analyst Krishna reviewed the surveillance data for the 73rd time. Mandibles clicking in agitation. The other analysts had dismissed the human activity as expected scrambling. A dying species trying to postpone the inevitable. But Krishna had studied 3,000 years of species integration. They recognized the patterns. The humans weren't panicking. They were preparing. The population dispersion looked like refugee flight, but it was too organized, too strategic. The colony expansion seemed desperate, but the locations were defensible and resource-rich. The radio silence appeared to be isolation, but signal intelligence suggested encrypted communication networks, growing in sophistication. And most disturbing, human ships were venturing into non-convergent space, making contact, building relationships, finding the cracks in the convergences, carefully maintained isolation. Krishna compiled their report with growing unease. The humans had done what no species had managed in 10,000 years. They'd said no and survived long enough to make it stick. The report concluded with a single recommendation. Immediate action required. Subject species demonstrating unexpected resilience and adaptation. Continued independence represents potential catalyst for wider descent. Krishna submitted the report and waited. 3 standard cycles later, the response came from the High Coordinator's office. Analysis acknowledged. Observation continues. No action authorized at this time. Krishna's mandibles clicked in confusion. The threat was clear. Why delay? But the High Coordinator's reasoning was political, not strategic. An open attack on humanity would require justification, and the humans had been careful. No expansion into convergent space, no aggressive actions, no violations of any law the convergence could cite. They were being maddeningly legal in their rebellion. So the convergence would wait and watch. And when the humans finally made a mistake, as they inevitably would, the full weight of galactic civilization would fall on them like a hammer. At least, that was the plan. Earth, Morrison's private office. 48 months after rejection. 4 years. Morrison sat alone in his office, looking at the photograph on his desk. His daughter and grandchildren, living in one of the new habitat clusters near Jupiter. Safer there, statistically, than on Earth. He hated every bit of logic that made it true. The door chimed. Come. Admiral Okonkwo entered. And Morrison knew immediately from his expression that something significant had happened. They're moving, Okonkwo said without preamble. Convergence fleet just departed their border station. ETA to Sol System 90, 6 days. Morrison felt the weight of 4 years of preparation settle on his shoulders. Size: 30? 7 capital ships, supporting escorts. Enough to conquer a moderately advanced species. Okonkwo's expression was grim but not defeated. Not enough to conquer us quietly. Then we make it loud, Morrison said. Activate all defense protocols. Recall our deep space assets, and get me a channel to our allies. It's time to see who actually stands with us. Seer. Okonkwo hesitated. This is it. Once this starts, there's no going back. What passed that point 4 years ago? Morrison said. When Ambassador Chen walked out of that chamber, she committed us to this path. Now we see if we're strong enough to walk it. He stood, suddenly feeling every one of his 68 years, and also feeling younger than he had in decades. Fear and purpose were a strange combination. Send the message to all human facilities. Stand ready. The quiet years are over.